Well, hello everybody. My name is Roger Green. I'm the director of the Academy Healing Nutrition, and we have our London school and our New York school, and we have our online school. So this webinar is sponsored by the Academy Healing Nutrition, and we do have courses starting in London this month, so you can always email us, especially the London school is academyhealingnutrition.uk, and our New York school is academyhealingnutrition.com. In New York, we have an April special this month. If you join our online program, you can start watching our online modules, and then you can attend our in-house training that starts again in October this year. And similar to London, you can begin the program there. And our training is in-house, and it's also available online, and a combination of both if you want. So what I mean by that is you can attend some of our modules online, and of course you can try and get to our in-house training. There's basically 10 modules that make up our training, and essentially that's over about 9 to 10 months, roughly one module a month. And this program has been going for over 35 years. My background is in traditional Chinese medicine, and I sort of go way back, you know, with natural healing and running various holistic health centers around the world. And I got involved with Nam Singh about, I would say about probably something like 12 years ago, when we started running the program here in New York. And our curriculum is based on what we call the longevity diet. And we draw on time-tested theories and philosophies around food as medicine. So, and we also draw on cultures of longevity, because for me, that's the proof in the pudding that they lived well over 100 years and had healthy children and healthy, no degenerative disease. So we take all those principles and put them into a program that we call the longevity diet. And of course, we draw on traditional Chinese medicine around for over 6,000-7,000 years, and Ayurvedic. And within that, we also bring in cutting edge Western nutritional theory. So in our program, we have practical modules as well. I always said that it's very, very important that everything in terms of the philosophy and theory is grounded in practical cooking classes, because you can basically talk about food as medicine until the cows come home, and it's not until people get to experience new dishes, new ingredients, and being around experienced teachers and chefs, especially like Nam Singh. And in our program, we take our students through the energetics of food as medicine. And we also get them up to a stage, a rather advanced stage, is cooking with the culinary herbs from Chinese medicine. And these are generally called tonic herbs. And our students discover how to bring these herbal energetics into soups and broths and congees and medicinal drinks and so forth. And we're constantly talking about the health of the organs and the food groups and the seasons and the immune system. And a strong theme in our curriculum is the Taoist concept of the universe, the human, the way of the earth, which basically we call the Tao. And it's been my privilege to be involved with Nam Singh, because there's not many people that I know, and I've been in this business for a long time now, that has the depth of knowledge that Nam Singh has around the culinary herbs and cooking and the energetics. And he's got this incredible background, which we're going to hear about. For instance, Nam Singh spent a lot of time from 5 years onwards, I think, in a Taoist monastery in Taiwan, which is incredibly unique. And he was there for, I think, well, we'll hear from Nam, but from memory, for over 10, 15 years. And every summer he would be there because of his grandfather got involved with Chinese medicine in Taiwan. I think the story goes that his grandfather actually cured himself of an ailment with Chinese medicine and then went on to devote himself to Chinese medicine for the rest of his life. And he was instrumental to getting Nam Singh to this Taoist monastery. And in Taoism, we have what's called the 8 rays of the Taoist yin and yang application, practical application. So there's acupuncture, there's meditation, there's food as medicine, herbal medicine, as you know, and qigong and things like Feng Shui and cosmology and astrology. So it is a total approach, a total lifestyle, philosophical and healing approach. And so Nam was trained in all of these arts, but his passion was very much around food as medicine, and he runs a program in San Francisco. And we get him out to New York every year, and we do a Chinatown tour with Nam Singh, which is a lot of fun. I've never met anybody who just knows everything about every single herb and food in Chinatown and what to do with it and what its energetic properties are and how to cook it than Nam Singh. So it's just a real privilege for me to know Nam Singh and to be hanging out with him as much as possible. And we've had him teaching in London and in Prague and pretty much doing all sorts of seminars all over the world. So Nam Singh, how are you doing there?
I'm fine, thank you.
So it would be good to just hear a little bit about your background and where it all started. And then, of course, we'll get into talking a bit more about, you know, the concept of Taoism and a little bit of the history. And then we'll bring it up to speed with talking about the concept of Wei Qi and the immune system. And then we'll get to tangible things, folks, like what can you do for your health, for your immune system in the current circumstances that we're in. So Nam Singh, hi. I'm going to be quiet now.
Okay. Well, there's one thing in in Taoism. We say everybody has a story. Some is more interesting than others, but it's the one thing that connects us all. We all have stories. And I never thought of my story as anything more than a story until other people heard it. So it's the one thing that I am usually not so gung-ho to always talk about, but I understand people are curious, and especially when they hear my name and then they see my face. The one thing I can say is that I'm pretty sure that I'm the first African-American Taoist priest since from the age of 15.
Wow.
If someone else has beat that record, I'd like to meet them.
Right. Well.
Anyway, so I have to think that you know, we're all born into certain circumstances. We are all we are all products of our environment. And one aspect of my environment is that my father was in the military. So being such, I was very fortunate to be able to travel a little bit. And there was a situation in which he was transferred to Taiwan. And that was going to be a temporary situation. So my maternal grandparents decided to go along with us because I was very young, and they didn't know how long they were going to be there. They knew at least 6 months. But if I was going to start school, they didn't want to keep pulling me out of school and putting me into school again. So that was a consideration. So my grandparents actually went to Taiwan first and set up where we were going to be living and getting everything together. My grandfather was very social person. He had a few ailments, and he actually got quite sick. It might have been because of the change. We don't know. But whatever caused it, it developed into something very serious. And he had struck up a conversation with an elderly gentleman just by going to the park. And this gentleman was actually a Taoist priest, but he, on his time away, he would go to the park early in the morning and practice his physical disciplines like Tai Chi and Qigong and things like that. And my grandfather would go and watch him every morning, almost like a practice. They struck up a conversation, became very, very acquainted with one another. And then one day, my grandfather wasn't feeling so well. He didn't get out of bed, and that was the only time he never showed up. And then a gentleman noticed that after 3 weeks, he wasn't there. And so he knew the address, so he came by just to check to see how he was doing. And then he found out that my grandfather was very ill. And unbeknownst to my grandfather, he was also a medical doctor of classical Chinese medicine. And my grandfather had all kinds of tests, Western tests, all these things, and nothing. They couldn't find out what exactly was wrong, and they didn't know exactly what to do. But fortunately, his friend knew what to do, and immediately took his care as a priority. And in a reasonable period of time, he got well, and he got well with in a way in which he didn't have any relapse. He had more energy than when he started out. And so that made them even closer as friends. And he inquired about, all this time, I didn't even know you were a doctor, and where do you work? And all these kind of things came up, and came up that he was one of the instructors at the temple called Dragon Tiger Mountain in Taiwan. And that was it was like a parochial school. It was a school and cultural center in which young people who had interest in Chinese culture and also Taoist culture, all of those arts were taught there. And it's under the school of, there are many different types of schools of Taoism, but it was the Dragon Tiger Mountain sect, Dragon Gate practices. So when I finally arrived, my parents were thinking about, well, where am I going to go to school and all this kind of things. And my grandfather said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it, unbeknownst to my parents. So he approached the gentleman that he had met and said, what about having my grandson come to your school? And he says, oh, we've never had a foreigner before in our school. The one thing I love about the Chinese, it has nothing to do with prejudice. It has to do with, if you're not Chinese, you're a foreigner. So if you're not Chinese, you're a foreigner. That's it. It's simple. So you can't say that it has anything to do with prejudice. So he said, we never had a foreigner before. And also, he doesn't speak Chinese, and everything is taught in Chinese, Mandarin. He says, well, he's young, so he can learn. So he says, okay, come back tomorrow at a certain time, and we'll see what happens. So immediately that night, my grandfather was giving me the do's and the don'ts of Chinese culture. Don't do this, don't do that, be quiet. Don't touch things that you haven't been invited to. All of these things. So my head is kind of full of do's and don'ts and what's going on. I had no idea. At 5 years old, you're pretty pliable. So you just see everything as kind of something interesting. And I was kind of a serious kid anyway, so it was just a matter of, I hope I can remember all of these kind of things. So I went to the school, and there was all these older men sitting at a table, and it was kind of like what you see in the kung fu movies. All the old masters sitting there with long hair tied up into buns, and dressed very elegantly. And the friend of my grandfather was doing most of the talking, introduced us. They introduced themselves to me. I'm basically just sitting there. They're having a conversation, and it's going on and on and on and on, and getting very exciting, and pounding on tables and all these kind of things. I have no idea what they're talking about. But there's a part of me that's thinking that it's not going well, because it seemed overly exciting. So about an hour or two after, about an hour or two of all of this, there was a decision made that, of course, we've never had a foreigner here before, not because we didn't want any, there's just no one has ever applied. It's never been done. So they say, if I can be there for a whole year, like a probational period, if I can fit in for a whole year, then it will be all right. And as quick as it started, it was over. So the very next week, I actually started my classes in what has become my lifestyle. So at 5 years old, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and preparing for chanting, and then physical exercises, and doing chores and all of these kind of things is very unusual to Western education. One of the things that I admired was that the subjects that I didn't like mathematics and all those kind of things, or seemed difficult, were taught in a way in which it was interesting. So I actually learned mathematics through calculations of actually learning astrology, and a little bit of astronomy, and through also studying the I Ching, because it's all numbers. So that made it fun, because I came back to the States and had to learn algebra and all that kind of stuff. I just thought this wasn't very interesting. There's nothing fun about it. So so the whole array of subjects in the morning time, because from morning to about noon is the best time for hard subjects. So you learn those kind of things in the morning. And then as the energy starts to go down, then you do all the fun kind of things. Where you still have to pay attention, but you're not as fresh, because the energy is starting to wane, and you're starting to go into the night rhythm. So that was very interesting. And the other interesting thing is that the teachers were not ordinary teachers. They had many years of practice and study and great insight. So not knowing at the time, but after, as I was preparing to leave from the school in 1969, I had really deep conversations with my particular sponsor, and he had informed me that we guide students to their fate. We don't pick careers for them, but we guide them to their fate, meaning that they have a way of, through your personality and through how you function and so forth, to sort of steer students to their fate, to what it is that they're supposed to do. And I had no idea what my fate was going to be. And sometimes I still question it, but I think that's quite amazing, because that's not something that's not normal in our culture. You know, you're lucky to have a very inspirational teacher, and you actually fall into or find your path. But in this particular type of training, it was purposeful. It was not a guess. It was not assumed. So at the age of 15, I was ordained as a Taoist priest in the Dragon Tiger Mountain Temple and Dragon Gate tradition, which is actually a non-monastic tradition, meaning that the priests and the priestesses, they can get married, they can have normal lives. It's completely up to you. There are some schools of Taoism that are much more monastic and things like that. They sort of learned that from the Buddhist tradition. But luckily, this one was not. Taoism really is about participating in life as opposed to pulling yourself away from it. So anyway, so at age 15, I was ordained. I spent a total of 15 years. When I first went there was 5 years, and then I kept going back and forth to a total of about 15. And when I came back to the States, it was very difficult, because there wasn't a community that I could really hook up with that had this kind of interest. So it was just me maintaining that. And it wasn't until I came to California in the 70s that I actually started to see, or I was actually guided to a woman by the name of Rosemary Gladstar, who's a herbalist. And she invited me to speak at her school and her weekend seminars and things like that. And I pretty much talked about Chinese herbs and a little bit about Taoist culture, but pretty much about herbs, because it was a herbal school that she was running. And I was teaching Tai Chi at the university. And so my whole life was sort of made a big change, because I was always interested in religion. I even stepped out of my my traditional training and studied with different other spiritual teachers, and studied Culinary yoga, and got involved with the Hare Krishnas and all of these kind of things. And it really just kind of threw me right back into where I was supposed to be. There were nice traditions, learned a lot from them, but it wasn't my fate to follow those for the rest of my life. So now, what I'm doing now is that I finally can wear one hat instead of 3 or 4. Because then in the beginning, I felt like I was wearing my Tai Chi teacher hat, and I was wearing my hat where you just work in the world as a normal person. And then I was wearing my spiritual hat when I did my own disciplines and practices. And this felt fragmented. It wasn't until the 90s that I actually pulled it all together and just said, one hat is enough. All is under that one umbrella. So that's my story.
So how would you describe your one hat business now, Nam Singh? What are you up to now? Your main focus is food as medicine and integrating the culinary herbs.
Right.
And essentially training people in the principles of Taoism. So perhaps it would be good to hear, what Taoism is, the principles and guidelines that people embody from Taoism on a day-to-day basis. It would be good to hear about, the practical side of Taoism as well.
Well, one of the things I noticed that now I'm pretty much born here in this country and raised to a certain degree. one thing about Americans is that we have a tendency to be somewhat irreverent to other cultures to a certain degree. We can just go in and pluck out something because, oh, that's nice, and everyone else seems to like that too. So I'll add that to my life, and without totally understanding the whole 360-degree philosophy behind what it is that they've plucked out. And also, being born American and being raised in somewhat of a Christian environment from other relatives and so forth, you have that kind of, I call a baggage, because that's always on your back, because that's what you're introduced to as a very young. So you're always comparing, and sometimes that's not a good idea. But it's just, the cross you have to bear. When you're a convert from one tradition to a next, sometimes it can be very laborious, and it can be a problem. But luckily, I was pretty flexible, so it always pops up every once in a while about comparing this to that, and sometimes even giving lectures and talking about Taoism. You always have to bring up compared to Christianity and so forth. But to tell you the truth, Taoism is very unique. Taoism is a native-born religion of China. It has been influenced by Buddhism. It has been influenced by Confucianism, and some of those traditions are very, very, very obvious. But it's a religion that is not based on faith or belief. It is, you are not ordered to believe or to have faith. There are simple truths in the world. Whether you believe them or not is unnecessary. It's just the self-evidence that things exist. Reality exists, whether you believe it or not, or have faith in it or not. So Taoism is a practice-based religion through practice. And it has systems built into it so that normal everyday people can have a more or less stressful life, and helps one to understand their true nature. So all the systems that come out of Taoism, like the physical disciplines, these are for helping you to have better health, also to help you to understand yourself, and all geared towards bringing you to your true nature. So these truths are self-evident. They're not based in belief or faith. It's not necessary. And it's not necessary that it's based on any sort of scripture either. Scriptures should just be guidelines, but it's not some sort of mysterious revealed scripture, and then we're going to base our entire life on that. It's not that at all. Like I said, it's through practice. Taoism also, from the Chinese point of view, they feel that there has to be a religion that deals with life, and there has to be another aspect of that religion that deals with death. So Taoism is really a religion that deals with the life cycles and rhythms of nature. And if you want to make it more personal, and because of your particular background, and we don't really have a personal God that in the Taoist tradition. We like I say, it's a practice. So there is a strong directional kind of gearing you towards self-motivation and self-practice. So with the systems that have come out of Taoism, if there's some doubt in your direction, what shall I do? You absolutely have no idea where to go. So you consult the I Ching. The I Ching is a form of divination that clearly will help you out of these particular, I call them black holes in life, where you actually have no sense of direction. The rug has been pulled out and you're just a free fall. What do I do now? So what do? You ask a friend, but you don't really like what they're saying. So that doesn't help either. So by consulting the divination, the I Ching, this sincerely, you get a clear answer. When it comes to health, there's so many health practices, from simple things like Tai Chi, Qigong, Nigong, all these kind of practices. This is helping a person to understand themselves, guiding them to their true nature, keeping them healthy. So it's a form of self-education. As you know, if you don't know, then you suffer. But the more you know, then you can ease the suffering. So these systems are put into place and have been, they're self-proving. We don't have to prove it anymore. It's over 5,000 years and maybe 1,000 years of unrecorded information. Taoism came out of the shamanic practice, which is a practice of nature, understanding our relationship to nature. And there's not a civilization in the world that doesn't come from that kind of understanding nature. It seems that as we develop, we sort of get away from understanding nature. So we get pulled away from our true nature. We get pulled away from what is natural. So Taoism is really about helping one to understand their true nature and pointing them back to nature. And there are many ways to go about it. And the thing that I like about it is that you're not dependent on any particular thing. You're not dependent on any particular deity. You're not dependent on the priest. You get the instructions, you practice it. It's like life. Hopefully you gain knowledge throughout your life, and then at some point you develop wisdom. When we're born, we have no wisdom. We're just this vessel, this flesh bag. We have no wisdom. We have a lot of energy. We're blood producers. But as we advance and grow in life, we learn, we gain knowledge, and this knowledge is turned into wisdom. And then hopefully we have enough Jing to go into the next phase of life. So Taoism there is no simple answer, because it seems like the more you try to explain it, to try to explain something that you cannot contain in a box is very difficult. But generally speaking, it is the universal oneness. It's a universal truth that exists in every culture. They just call it different things. But the best thing about it is the personal empowerment that it gives you as an individual. We're not saying that we want you to just be in tunnel vision and just you. But what you learn and what you gain, you also can share with other people. So depending on your fate, depends on how deep maybe you'll go. It's wide open. So in Taoism, we say, oh, if we talk about this particular God or this or whatever, if that's how you want to see it, that's fine. That's up to you. But understand the reality that that's just a vessel. It's a symbolic imagery, and it contains energy. Taoism is really about the energy of the world, of the universe, and how the more we understand that, then the less attachment that we have, and how we understand our emotions and all these kind of things, then the freer we become. Where we especially in America, we think we're free, but we're still slaves to a certain degree to all the things that we attach ourselves to. So Taoism is about unattaching yourselves to that. It's like the trailer attached to the car. It's still a trailer, whether it's attached to the car or not, but unattachment. Yeah.
Well, Nam, we're about halfway through the webinar. It will be, I think, appropriate to switch gears a little bit here and start to talk about some of the tangible things that Taoism gives us in our life. For instance, the self-mastery, the food as medicine, the barefoot doctor tradition, be your own doctor. And of course, in our current situation with, we use the term evil qi. It's not a religious term. It's not a moralistic term. It's a, in terms of flus and colds, etc. There's a term that we use like wind heat and wind cold, or these negative forces that can pervade the body in terms of heat and cold and damp. Essentially, Chinese medicine is made up of the study of Tao. We study yin and yang. Yin and yang can be applied to every aspect of life in the universe. And of course, in our curriculum, we focus quite strongly on the inner landscape of yin and yang and the health of the organs through the 5-element theory. We study that very, very intensively in the curriculum. And we study the 3 treasures, this concept of Jing and Qi, and the Shun, or your mind, spirit, the pivot of life energy. And we have a concept called the Wei Qi, which is the way Chinese medicine looks at the immune system. So, we're limited in time here, and these are big subjects, and of course you study them for the rest of your life, so to speak. But it'll be nice to switch gears and talk about some of the practical things that, for instance, you would recommend at this time. The whole concept of the Wei Qi, the concept of, getting rid of the so-called evil Qi, which is the concept of, the influenza, etc. And maybe talk about some of the herbs and cooking styles that you'll recommend at this time.
Okay. So one of the things, this will be all under the title of Tao health practices. What is the philosophy of health according to Taoism? So the philosophy of health according to Taoism is that there are several categories that we have to take into consideration. There's exercise, there's diet, there's breathing techniques. All of these things are helping us as human beings to become healthy people. And the understanding of illness is being out of harmony, or the inhibitance of qi that flows through our body. So when the qi cannot flow evenly, then there is illness. And also illness is also referred to as an inappropriateness in time, a glitch, a obstacle. And that's based on our, and that comes from us, from the fact that our actions. So our actions have a tendency to cause illness. So exercise has, like I said, has to do with the types of, as simple as walking, but from the Taoist point of view, as a Kung Fu, Daoyin, which is a self-massaging type of thing, Qigong, which is breathing, and yogic practices. All of these things are the foundations for just having good health. You get instructed in those kind of things, and then you practice it on your own. You build experience with that. Dietetics is understanding your relationship to food. Food is one of the best ways to guide yourself to your true nature. And the interesting thing at this particular time, where we're kind of sheltered in place, is the perfect time to start understanding what is your true nature and what is your true appetite, because you have a lot of time. You're at home. You can actually eat the way we're supposed to eat. Big meal for breakfast, larger meal for afternoon, lunch, and the lightest meal in the evening time. You have no excuse once you get your groceries. So this is even though it seems to be negative, there is something positive. And you don't know how long this is going to last. So take advantage of this kind of thing. So dietetics, it also involves a little bit of the fundamentals of Chinese medicine. You don't have to be an expert, but just knowing a few things can help you quite a bit. For instance, making juk with Chinese herbs in them that can be taken on a daily basis is very instrumental in protecting you and giving your digestion a break. Understanding the seasonal changes that go on. You know, we have 12 months. Between one season to the next, we refer to that as kind of a schizophrenic time where the energetics is kind of crazy and the weather is changing. So a lot of people get sick during that particular time. So we can prevent that kind of thing by knowing a little bit about this time is coming, and we can prepare by what we're ingesting. One of the simplest things is, and especially at this time, is getting proper rest. Sleeping is highly recommended right now, because some of us are not having to go to work so early. Of course, in big cities, you have to get up much earlier in order to get to where your work is. So being able to get good sleep now and giving your digestive system a rest is quite profound, because generally speaking, we have a tendency to eat too late at night and too heavy, and our bodies spend too much time digesting when it can be working on other aspects. And especially for prevention, you really want to have good rest, so that the body, that usually when you're sleeping, the body is saying, okay, what do I need to work on? But if there's too much food in the stomach, it goes, well, first we have to digest this. And if it's like a lot of stuff, it doesn't get to spend all the time that it needs to work on other things, or to improve chi flow, or to work on things that might be deep inside the body that we're not even aware of. So having an overly stressed digestive system diverts the curing aspect of our bodies during our sleeping time. So it's very important to recognize that. And then getting back to breathing, is the breathing techniques are very important. This is through the physical exercises and just simple meditation. All these things are very, very profound if done properly. But one of the first things that we need to also take into consideration is hygiene. Maintaining hygiene, restoring our basic energy. And one of the simple ways of doing that is a technique called dry skin brushing. It's taking a nice brush and brushing our bodies. You can get a nice natural boar bristle brush. You can start with your face and move down just by brushing. And what this does, it's almost like a massage in the sense that it actually goes to the cellular level energetically, which is a form of detoxifying. With no water, just dry. And the skin starts to turn nice and pink and rosy. This is a good sign. And you do your entire body. So since we have a lot of time on our hands, we can try that. Even if you just try this one thing, you'll get some good results. So the dry brushing aspect is very important, and then finishing it off with taking a shower or your bath. Actually, to tell you the truth, showers are for quick kind of cleaning kind of thing, but actually showering can be problematic because showering has a tendency to push all the energy down and very deep into the body. So it's recommended that you dry brush first, then turn the shower on, get wet, soap up, turn the water off, scrub and do all that, then rinse off, and then get out. It's highly recommended to do bathing more than showering because bathing is kind of a steeping aspect. It causes things to come out. So if you're full of garbage, you're sending it deeper and deeper and deeper into the body, and very deep by showering. So I would say you can. Some places don't have baths, so you best that you can. But limiting the time that you're standing under the shower itself is a good idea. So hygiene practices are very important in the Taoist practice, and they're even more so for people like myself who are priests. We have it's almost like a meditation. So that's kind of some basic little things that within the philosophy of Taoism that we think about. The other thing is that there are three critical or very important things. We want to have circulation, synchronicity, and balance in our bodies. Synchronicity. This is having to deal with how the qi flows in our body with no obstructions. Synchronicity has to do with primarily with movement, the inner and outer environment, and balance is basically how Tao expresses itself through balance. So in some aspects of life, balance is great. In other aspects of life, I use a new word called flex, having this kind of mobility. Our daily life should be a sense of flex, this kind of movement. To achieve balance in other things is better than to try to maintain balance in our everyday life. That's not really achievable. So flex is kind of, words are important. So if you focus on the wrong one, you don't get the right results. So we have to be careful about that. So when it comes to eating, it's very important that we pretty much stay within the season. The season is very apparent what is available, but because we're in America, we have abundancy. So we have watermelons in February, and strawberries and all these kind of things. I remember as a child going to the grocery store, you pretty much only saw what was really available. So now we have to kind of have discipline to go, oh, that looks so good, but it's really not time for that. And also, when it is time for those kind of things, you get excited. Oh boy, we're going to have corn or strawberries or whatever within that season. So it's very important to be as seasonal as possible, as local as possible, and as healthy as possible. Yes, we have to take in consideration our finances and all these kind of things. So, but it is very important to try to manage in some way. So organic kind of things and seasonal kind of things is very important. So that's why I say that, especially for the older people at this particular time, but not just older people, but it's a natural thing as we get older to sort of eat less and meat and that kind of protein. It's a natural evolution, and especially the more in flex you are or balanced you are, it's very natural. The more out of balance you are, those kind of things increase. And it's when you're really extremely young and so forth, and maybe you need this kind of protein and this kind of energetics. But as we get older, it's not all that necessary. So everybody's different. So it depends on each person's constitution, how much of that kind of thing you should engage in. But at this particular time, I highly recommend a lot more plant-based kind of foods, and maybe seasoned with some protein, but it's not necessary to have this kind of animal product every day. Again, depending on your constitution and your particular energetics will depend on how often, but this is just a recommendation. We really want to kind of lighten our eating habits right now so that we can let our bodies kind of regulate our immune system. We don't want to boost our immune system. We want to regulate it gently. So I'm not recommending that you just get all the immune things that you've read about or heard about and put them all into one big tea and drink it all day long, because that overworks the immune system, which makes you susceptible. So gently boosting, gently regulating, not boosting, regulating the immune system.
And what would be some of the herbs that you're personally using for regulating the immune system?
Well, I have a nice little example right here in front of me. These particular herbs here are specific to what I'm talking about. This one is called the Sanyao. This is the Chinese yam. Sanyao is considered to be a tonic herb. It's good for the spleen and stomach. It lowers blood cholesterol and blood pressure, and it regulates blood sugar as well. The nice thing about it is that it does taste good. It can be eaten on a daily basis. Soak it, can put it in soups. It can be, once it's rehydrated, it can also be put into stews and even stir fries. So these particular herbs that I'm mentioning now are also good herbs to put into stocks, because stock is a nice way of getting nutrition, light nutrition, but very substantial in its energetic, opposed to eating a lot of bulky food. And if you use the proper protein with it, you'll find that actually it's enough. You don't have to eat a lot. For an example, for those meat eaters, using like wild boar or boar bones and using tonic herbs, you'll find that it really will cut into how often you have to eat, because it's so nourishing and enriching that you don't really feel like you need that that's something more substantial, you see. Or yeah. So anyway, so Sanyao, wild yam, is one of those herbs. Another is astragalus or huang qi. This huang qi is a very, very it is a herb. Yes, right. That's a perfect, much bigger than this. The huang qi, it invigorates. It invigorates and builds the vital energy in the body. And there's a lot of scientific study going on with huang qi these days. Roger knows about this and can inform you on those things. But it's one of the things that it does is it increases the white blood cells in the body and it regulates the blood pressure as well. So huang qi is another one of my go-to herbs, and I also use it in stocks as well. It's very good for fatigue, for which you might be experiencing now, and stress because of the unknowingness of what's happening, nervous problems, and emotional instability. So for a lot of these people who are very nervous about everything, this is something that you can ingest. The next one is Huang Zhao, or the red date. These are red dates. They're sweet. They're delicious. And whenever you make chicken soup, it's quite nice to put up to about 10 of them in, depending on how big they are. The red date is very good for moving blood in the body. It tonifies the yang, and it circulates and tonifies the yang, and and the circulatory system. Very good for blood and moving blood, especially in women. But flavor-wise, it's so sweet, and it's when you make chicken soup, it kind of mellows out the chickeniness of the soup. Sometimes that flavor can be a little too strong, and so the sweetness of the red date is very beneficial. And of course, the reishi mushroom. This is considered the longevity herb, or in Taoism we use these as it's considered to be in the elixir of longevity or immortality. This particular Lingshire Ganoderma mushroom is highly prized, and helps build T cells in the body. So it's very, very good. But this one you cannot take if you have a cold or flu, because it will drive it deep into the body. So you have to be very careful about that. And a cold, flu, or fever. So you want to be careful about any of those kind of things. It does help the immune system. And there's a premise in Western philosophy that if a little is good, more is better. I don't follow that tradition. It's a little crazy. So just because I mentioned these, more is not necessarily better. Subtleness is better. Be subtle. Start out with a little bit and then go from there. And then there's just one more. Two more. Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle. That's really interesting. And this one we use in the tea. It's the flower. It's actually the unopened flower that we're looking for. So using that in tea is good as an immune regulator. And then Deng Shen. This is the Deng Shen. Cordonopsis. This has almost, it has kind of a, it's a tonifying herb. It tonifies the vital energy of the body, particularly the spleen. Very good for helping to regulate and strengthen the spleen energy. It helps to regulate the metabolism, tones muscles and bone, and it has a hormone-like property that helps with regulating our physiology in the body. So this is a very good. This particular herb is, especially for women, is said to be similar to ginseng without the heat that ginseng has. So all of these herbs that I'm mentioning are tonifying herbs. Now, we must understand when it comes to tonification, it's a gentle strengthening as opposed to the very strong medicinal type of Chinese herbs that we use in formulations. So these are general, these are used in cookings. These are the herbs that the grandmas use all the time. And the entire family can enjoy these kind of herbs. And then finally, one of my favorites is called a Jiao Gulan, which is a Ganastemma. And this is not a very good picture, but this it's basically a grass, but I do have a better representation of it. This is my plant. This is the live Ganastemma, my baby right now. It's springing. It's reaching out to grow everywhere. It's hard to contain almost. But this is the live Ganastemma. And this one is also considered a longevity herb. The people who drink this herb, from where it comes from in China, have a tendency to live a very long, healthy life. And when it's dried and used as a tea, it's amazing. It slows down aging. It prevents senility. It increases vigor. It reduces oxidation, and it reduces what causes you to age and your cells to age in the body. It also helps with altitude sickness and improves digestion, strengthens the mind, and improves sexual function and like I said, fatigue. Yes. So these herbs are relatively inexpensive and can be used over a long period of time. Of course, whenever it comes to herbs, I always suggest that people, find out where they are energetically before they start taking herbs, so that you have a foundation, you know what's going on. Because if you're too hot, some things might exacerbate that, or if you're too cold, some things might exacerbate that. But relatively, most of these are pretty safe and can be simply just put into stocks to start with, and then branch out into jokes, and then branch out from there.
So Nam Singh, before we take some questions, is there anything else you want to comment on or mention today before we switch gears? And by the way, folks, I'll get Nam Singh to just compile a little brief of these herbs, their name and the English name, Chinese name. Just a very, very simple brief on this, and I'll email that out with the recording in 1 or 2 days. But yeah, Nam Singh, is there anything you want to mention before we switch gears again and take some questions?
Yes, well, one of the things is definitely increase your tea drinking. Especially if you like matcha, you should increase your matcha intake, because that is it's very powerful and very good for this time, because there's a lot of health benefits. Regulating and fortifying the immune is the key right now, not boosting it, not shocking it. It's a gentle baby. You want to rock it. You don't want to shake it. I mentioned getting sleep, drink plenty of water, eat colorful vegetables, eat spices, a variety of different spices, take vitamins, especially vitamin A, C, D, and the mineral zinc. These things are very important. Try to get it through your food, but if you can't get it through your supplements, take herbs like honeysuckle, because of its detoxifying properties, clears heat out of the body, and eating mushrooms. The tea that I recommend are the pu'ers, the pu'er teas, the dark teas, the teas that are highly fermented and somewhat smoky in taste, almost like has a kind of foresty, cherry flavoring kind of things, because of their immune affecting properties, their digestive affecting properties, their enriching to life properties. So drinking the pu'er is very good. And for those people in London, there's a wonderful clinic and tea shop called My Tea, and they have a wonderful tea called it's a pu'er. It's called Presence Collector. It's a tea cake, and that one is highly recommended. It's about 16 years old, grown off of trees that are over 300 years old. Wonderful tea, and this is the type of tea that you have to have time to enjoy, because just a little bit, well, you can get 10, 15 pourings from that. So drink your teas. Green teas, they're okay, but the darker ones, those are the ones to focus on.
Well, Nam Singh, that's absolutely wonderful advice. So we will look at some questions now. And so just remember, folks, you know, this is sponsored by the Academy Healing Nutrition. And we have our training program starting now in London, and you can join that curriculum. We have modules virtually every month, and at the moment we're doing a lot of live streaming. We've also got some online components, and we've got meetups happening with our students. The physical classes are not available for perhaps another month, but the curriculum is up and running, and the website for London is academyhealingnutrition.uk, and you can email the director there, Patricia, at hello@academyhealingnutrition.uk. And you can contact us here in New York, academyhealingnutrition.com, info@, and you will be receiving the recording from Academy Healing Nutrition, so make sure it doesn't go to your spam folder, right? And we have our online training available, and we have a special discount. You can save up to $800 if you enroll this April. You begin our online training here, and then you can attend our in-house training when it all begins again in October this year. So do email me if you've got any interest in the training program, but let's take some questions. So, so there's a question here about astragalus in stalk form from Mona. How many do we use to make a tea, for example? So the question, Nam Singh, is about astragalus, and how many would you use to make a tea? I think
about 10 sticks to a quart of water.
Okay, a quart of water. So if you're in Europe, you're going to have to Google what a quart is, and if you're America, it's all going to make sense. So you make a bit of a batch, Mona, and because it keeps very, very well. And if you're going to do this, you might as well make a nice little batch. So think of it as a quart of water, and you put 10 of those strips in, and then
so if you for 10 strips to a liter of water, a liter, you can use about, you can,
yeah.
And bring it to a boil. Boil it for 10 minutes, and then let it simmer for 45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes. Yeah, and then you, of course, Mona, you can add some other things to it. Then, like if you want, you know, some red dates, etc., and even licorice. Licorice is used quite a bit, Chinese style dried licorice. Let's do some questions from the top here. Question from Deborah. She asked, meaning of circulation according to Tao. Okay, so there's the question. Meaning of circulation according to Tao, question mark.
Circulation, simply, that was defined as uninhibited flow of qi. This is what is meant by circulation. Uninhibited flow of qi imply that illness is an inhibition, there's something that's stopping the flow of qi. So we always want to try to maintain the circulation of qi so that it's not inhibited. This circulation is a combination of heaven, yang, and earth, yin, combining together. This constant circulation is necessary. This constant exchange is necessary for circulation. So as we get older, it's about keep moving. You fall, you get up. You don't just stay, you don't stay still. It must constantly be flowing. And removing things that get in the way. So a lot of personal stuff like holding on to things and getting stuck in this and getting stuck in that and mental, all these things, it's all part of the circulation. Free flowing.
There's a question here from Yadira. Do you have any website where you can buy some of these herbs since everything is closed? Well, there's one, of course, website that you can begin looking at things that you essentially don't get the raw herbs. Nam Singh has, I think, a website for that, but there's dragonherbs.com where you can get the Gynostema tea that Nam Singh mentioned. It's called Spring Dragon, and it really is the #1 longevity tea on the planet, and that's a scientific fact. The genocides there, or the saponins, over 120 saponins, and that area of China that Nam Singh mentioned where historically they drank this tea, they are kind of like the longest living people on the planet, and that was seriously studied in the 1970s. And Ron Tiergarten created a formula called Spring Dragon, so that's available, Dragon Herbs. But you can also buy Gynostema from herbal shops. Now, do you have a website, say, where people can get some of these raw herbs that are good quality? For instance, Chinatown is all closed down. People can't get these herbs at the moment. Do you have a resource for folks for these herbs, Nam Singh?
Yeah, there's Asia Natural Products in San Francisco. It's called asianaturalproducts.com.
Very good. And you recommend the quality, etc.
Yeah, because they specialize in non-chemically treated Chinese herbs.
Asian natural
asianaturalproducts.com.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. That's an excellent resource, folks.
There's a tea here that I'm showing you right now, and these two are very good for this particular purpose. One is called Baolagen, and this is a very, very good for cold and flu and this kind of thing, but the elements that are inside are nice immune regulators. And then the other one is called Cold Aid, and this is produced by Prince of Peace. Prince of Peace. You can just look that up. I think it's princeofpeace.com.
No problem, Nancy. We'll compile a resource, over the next 24 hours. We'll just I'll be able to put all of that down into, some of the resources and some of the websites that you're mentioning. I'll write it all down for folks. So that's
the reason I recommend those is it's very simple. They're granulars, just not even a tea bag, and so you just pour hot water on it and drink it throughout the day. It's really quite nice.
Yeah, sounds good.
And very inexpensive. It's 10 bags in each one of those boxes, so it's very affordable, and it's something that you can do for prevention.
There's a question here from Gabrielle. How to treat dry and itchy body, which is because we use a lot of soap and disinfectant for now. maybe you're going overboard a little bit there. Maybe you don't have to do the whole soap thing on your body. I mean, guys, we have trillions of viruses. In Taoism, these are our friends. We don't have enemies in the natural world. We have trillions of viruses and bacteria and fungi, and we love the dirt. And, you don't have to go overboard with this whole theme of being scared of our friends. They're called the virus world. You just have to make a nice, innate, natural immunity. And that's the way we're going to get through this whole situation is people, you know, you don't wait around for the vaccine and all of that, which is going to be, you know, my opinion, going to be poisonous anyway. You have to work on creating your own natural immunity. That's what this webinar is about, which is why we're encouraging you to look into what Taoism is about, and we're encouraging you to look into our 35-year-old practical curriculum here, where we train people in you becoming a master of your own health, right? So you don't have to go overboard, but Gabriel, okay, if you do have dry and itchy body, Nam Singh, what would be your recommendation?
Well, as I mentioned before, the skin brushing is very good for that because it's going to bring blood and nutrients to the skin. Using soaps that have more of less harsh ingredients and more moisturizing effect is another option besides using very harsh soaps. And then using, after you do wash your hands, use a nice moisturizer that has comfrey in it. Yeah. There are a lot of skin creams out there, but try to find one that has comfrey in it. Comfrey, sometimes they may be a combination of comfrey and other things. One of the other ingredients is horsetail. So, but definitely comfrey, because that's very good for the skin. It's very rejuvenating, and it helps with the collagen and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, look for those.
It's an incredible herb, but we don't have time to go there. Let's have a look here at the next question. I grow a number of herbs in my garden, but I understand the actual geographic location, altitude, etc., can affect their potency. What is your opinion on this? I live in subtropical Florida. So Anne is growing a number of herbs in her garden, and but her location can affect the potency. What's your opinion?
Of course. Yeah, it's true, and but that's not the number one thing to focus on, because if you grow herbs in the mountain, they're going to be much different than the herbs in the valley. If you grow herbs in the valley, they're going to be much different than the herbs by the sea. So yes, that does affect. There is a difference in potency. What I would recommend, because she's in somewhat of a tropical area, that she should focus on the herbs that flourish in that kind of environment, more so than trying to grow Ganoderma, which is high mountain and that kind of a thing. So yes, there is there will be a difference, but you know, if it's slightly weaker, you take a little bit more. If it's slightly stronger, you take a little bit less. This can only be determined through analysis anyway. So don't let that stop you from growing your herbs.
There's a question here, again from Mona. So you mentioned about the teas before, and she's just asking why the matcha is good at this time, particularly.
Because of it's just a little bit stronger in what all the teas are good at, especially in the antioxidant aspects. The matcha, it's fresher. It is a fresh green tea that has been pulverized. So you're getting kind of you're getting a strong dose anyway. Where some of the more mature ones they're strong, but you have to take maybe more over a longer period of time. So this is kind of a fresh, kind of slight jolt. It's just a little bit stronger, yeah.
Okay, there's another question here. Does cooking any of these foods you mentioned diminish their nutritional value? And of course, that's a question that comes up often for us in Chinese medicine. And it's something that Nam Singh and I have probably answered about 20,000 times. This whole theme of raw food and cooked food. And of course, in Taoism, we have this wonderful aspect, and that's called getting the benefit of both worlds, yin and yang, which is what we're able to achieve with this philosophy. And we do incorporate raw foods, especially seasonally, spring and summer, when you're needing to have a little bit more raw food and cooling foods. And then generally speaking, that gets somewhat reduced, say in autumn and winter time, but you can still enjoy raw foods. And I'll have a go at answering this very quickly, and then we'll hand it over to Nam. But essentially, it's about assimilation and digestion. So when you are making them more sort of what we call tonifying dishes, it's easier for you to digest and assimilate and then transform that into qi and blood than what it is with just a whole lot of raw food. And we're not worried about the nutritional value of that, because yes, there's some, when you do cook some vegetables, there's a slight, some vitamins, as you know, might be destroyed, but you're getting them from all other places, the fermented foods that we use and the nutritional dense foods that we use. So you're getting all of the nutrition that you need. The main thing is that you are able to assimilate it through balancing cooking styles and getting the taste in there, and what we call fortifying the qi of the spleen, which is a 6,000-year-old tradition called the school of the stomach and spleen. So digestion is vitally important here, so to have that sort of warming, tonifying effect. So otherwise your diet can be just too extremely yin and too cooling. And that can suit some constitutional types that are maybe hot in nature, but if you've got a more yin cooling style constitution, an overconsumption of raw foods can be very, very damaging. So let's hand it over to Nam Singh. The question is, does cooking any of these foods you mentioned diminish nutritional value?
So my particular training in Chinese medicine is from the which holds the spleen as emperor, as an organ. So we're very concerned maintaining the energetics and the proper function of the spleen, about how you assimilate. What is your digestive system overtaxed? So if it's overtaxed, then you have to eat things that are easy to digest. Undertaxed, whatever. So your cooking techniques. Earth Nursery School, when it comes to food, is very technique value. It's because you're overcooking it. So when it, and usually when it comes to vegetables, certain ones, especially when you steam them, this is one of the ways to preserve their energetics. But this is also one of the most difficult techniques, steaming, because 9 times out of 10, most people oversteam. So I'm always recommending that you put your vegetables in the steamer. After it's come to a boil, then you heat off and the pot off the stove and check it. And then you use a toothpick to see what kind of al dente you like. And then that way you won't overcook. So it's the technique of how you cook it that's very important. And staying seasonal.
Yeah. Well, that's the sort of thing that we teach in our curriculum, folks. Half of our curriculum is practical cooking classes, where you're around experienced chefs like Nam Singh. You get to eat the foods, you see all these cooking styles, and how to put all of these ingredients into absolutely delicious tasting dishes. There's a next question here. What does it mean to have cold hands and feet and acne? There you go. Well, so here's the question: cold hands and feet and acne.
And acne?
Yes.
Acne, yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing, the yang deficiency to a certain degree, not enough yang. But then again, there's this kind of false fire going on inside that's creating this kind of acne situation. So find out, yeah. What I recommend is that the person there has a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So
I mean, obviously,
they
folks,
follow through with a proper treatment.
yes. And look, folks, we can't get into personal health too much here because we take that very seriously, and we have to see you. We have to interview you with all the things that you're doing. It's a holistic approach. But in a nutshell, when you have cold hands and cold feet, as Nam Singh, it's a yang qi deficiency or yang deficiency. You need more warming, circulating foods and dishes in your diet. One thing that we have in our curriculum is called health assessment. And we go through all of these signs and symptoms and put them into the clinical language of Chinese medicine, things like blood deficiency, like a lot of people get very blood deficient. There's qi deficiencies, there's stuck qi syndromes, and there's digestive syndromes. So we spend a whole weekend with our students going through what we call health assessment and exploring that internal life landscape, so that it's one of the tools that you need to master all the changing dynamics around you, to be able to read the signs and symptoms, to have a look at your tongue, your complexion, and then to be able to reflect on your behavior and making the appropriate changes to bring you back into homeostasis and balance. Moving on, oh, hello, Leo. Leo's one of our students in London, and he asks, on hygiene, is the temperature of the water relevant? Any recommendations? This is a question about the baths and the showers that you were mentioning before.
Yeah, temperature is important. One of the things, for an example, when I was in the school, we didn't use hot water when it comes to showering. We use the cold water because it stimulates the immune system, and you use your body heat to dry. So we don't use a towel. So you have a washcloth that you wash in the cold water, and then you use your qi to dry your own body. So yes, the temperature is important. So I would suggest that lower heat is better. It doesn't have to be freezing. Of course, in the wintertime, it's much harder to do that. But sometimes summertime, I use a hot water because I actually want to sweat. So so temperature is important. Not so hot. In bathing, you really want as warm water as you can handle, because the bathing because you want to stew. You want to sit in the warm water, and you want to sort of detoxify. So when it comes to bathing, you want as warm water as you can comfortably handle, and showering, you want as cool water as possible. And then, of course, when you do the skin brushing, that's going to invigorate the circulation, so it makes it easier to dry without a towel. But until you get to that state, I recommend that you don't use the soft towel. Get the roughest towel you can find, because that also stimulates the skin and also creates heat. Don't get those fluffy, softy kind of towels. It's hard to find the rough one now. Yeah. Every time I look for one, it's very difficult. But try to find that.
Yeah, you can sometimes find those sort of scrubbing things on the market. Yeah. There's a question here from Daniela. Hello, Daniela, a student of ours in New York. And she asks, comfrey leaves or root? So before you were talking about comfrey, generally, what's your take on that? What are you?
The root is stronger, but the leaves are also, fine. So it doesn't matter, either one.
Yeah. Okay, another question here. Echinacea falls within the immune regulating or immune boosting category. Echinacea, what would you say? Is it regulating, adaptogenic, or is it more boosting? She's saying that she has taken it for a few weeks at this time to assist in immunity. So, Wea, what's your opinion on echinacea?
A little strong. I wouldn't use it. A
Too,
little too boosting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Do you have any specific brands that you would recommend for good quality vitamin A, C, D, and zinc?
I don't know. I think Herb Farm. I like that company. It's called Herb Farm. I think it's Christopher Hobbs. I think that's his line of herbs and supplements. So, but I think I don't have any other specific. I think you'll just have to research that on your own.
Yeah, well, we can put that down in the resources, that reference to that website. And of course, there's lifeextension.com here in America, one of the leading supplement companies that I generally recommend because of the incredible research that they do. The quality is very high. Bill Falloon, who established that way back in the 70s, he's been a brilliant pioneer of natural remedies, etc. So life extension. And of course, there's other ways of getting your zinc. For instance, we strongly recommend using seed vegetables in the longevity diet that we train our students in. And vitamin D, yes, very, very important, as you know, from getting plenty of sun. But yes, you might at this time take a supplement, but you can get vitamin D from other combinations, especially, you know, with maybe the fish oils, etc. Vitamin C, like if, you know, there is, like in some of the material out of China treating the current situation there, the hospitals had great results with high doses of vitamin C. But we've known that in Western herbalism for a long, long time. People often, with colds and flus, they start to mega dose themselves with vitamin C. So yeah, there's a place for that, but it's easy to get your vitamin C from just fresh green leafy vegetables. And for instance, one of my rituals is to get citrus, lemons and limes and maybe a grapefruit, and I chop it up and put it into filtered water. It soaks overnight. Don't put it in the refrigerator. We don't like cold foods. And then you take a couple of glasses of that, and boy, you're getting a beautiful dose of not only vitamins, but vitamin C, and very, very good for the liver and the chi flow of the body. And yes, so that the vitamins are readily available if you've got a diverse, nutrient-dense diet, and that's called the longevity diet, and that's what we teach. So moving on, I think we've just about covered our questions. We've pretty much done it. So thank you, Nam Singh. We will send the recording out to everybody. And over the next 24 hours, I will compile some of these resources. It's pretty straightforward. You know, we'll put some of these herbs down that Nam Singh's mentioned. We'll put down some of the teas. We'll put down some of the website and references, resources. So, as a reminder, you can always get in touch with London at hello@academyhealingnutrition.uk, and you can get in touch with me here, info@academyhealingnutrition.com, because we do have some discounts available for our training in the longevity diet, natural healing, and it's a certificate course. It's a certification as becoming a health practitioner. And it's a curriculum that's over 35 years. And we've got great resources. We've got some of the best teachers on this planet at the moment. There's Inga Linkina is actually doing a webinar next week, and I'll send you out a little promo for that. Hopefully you're on our newsletters. You can sign up for our newsletter at academyhealingnutrition.com. And we have Nam Singh teaching on the faculty. I do a number of the modules, and we have Letha Haverday here, well-known author, Karma Herbs. She's teaching the Ayurvedic component. So do keep in touch, folks. Thanks for joining us today. It's a goodbye from me in New York. And any final words, Nam Singh?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because of this situation we're in, I wasn't able to come to London, but there's talk that maybe later on this year. I'm looking forward, if it happens, to meet all the students in London. I love London. So hopefully you can see me in person.
And it's the same. You were due here in New York this month, and we've had to cancel that. But we're, you know, fortunately we can, we got a little bit of a meetup for our students with you this Sunday, and they're watching it online. So the curriculum is still moving forward in terms of its circulation in the Tao. So thank you very much, Nam Singh, and wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. Ciao.